So welcome to another conversation in our Movement Moment series. I'm super thrilled to have Jurie Kriel join me today. Jurie is the director of Next Move, which is one of the most strategic initiatives by movement.org globally, engaging young leaders around the world in the movement around Christ. And so, Jurie, thank you for being with us today.
It's great to be with you, Craig. Thank you for doing a great job of telling the story all around the world.
Well, let's just start with, in this horrific situation we're in, you're working with the young next generation of leaders around the world in this initiative. Tell me what you're hearing from these guys from around the world.
Well, obviously right now with the COVID-19 being the way it is, the reality is that most people have their worlds shaken a little bit, right? So the reality is that people are shaken, but I think what is really encouraging me lately is to see not only the resilience, but the innovation and creativity that is coming out of this situation. So I think I'm stirred. I'm encouraged by the fact that the Church of Jesus Christ is eternal, and whatever opposition comes its way, it'll just make it stronger, because God will work it together for the good. And I'm seeing that in younger leaders. I'm seeing them own it. I'm seeing them love it. I'm seeing them respond to the gospel in fresh new ways.
And when you talk about the young leaders, what's this age range, and who are these guys, and where are they involved in ministry?
Our focus is, and we kind of prefer the term younger leaders as opposed to young leaders, just because, the idea of youth is very relative. People are saying that 60 is the new 40 these days, but the reality is we're kind of looking at younger leaders. So essentially, your emerging leaders, so leaders under 40, the younger, the better, will be our focus. But there are from time to time leaders in their early 40s that we would feel is emerging and has great potential and has a heart and a connection for the next generation. That's kind of the focus areas, those leaders that are in the process of emerging and taking hold of the next season.
Got it. And then specifically, are there any example? Every country's got really difficult situations there, both in terms of the health and life and death and economic issues. Are there stories that are standing out to you that you're hearing from around the world?
I think there's some generic stories that I'm hearing all around the world, and then maybe a couple of examples. But I think the generic stories that I'm hearing is how quickly a next generation of leaders, because they are digital natives, they're translating their work into the digital space much easier than what I think digital immigrants are. Now, somebody said the other day, they don't think they're a digital immigrant, they're a digital peasant. But the fact of the matter is that I think the digital natives, which is typically your millennials and below, are much quicker at making the shift into digital, because I think it's less of a shift. So I think generically around the world, I'm excited about hearing stories about that. I think more specifically or particularly, I'm excited about stories that I'm hearing in the Hong Kong, where this has really gone in a bad way very quickly. But to see the church respond. Now, to give you a bit of a picture, Craig, the church in Hong Kong went from having the riots and the church not being able to gather because of the politicization of the whole, and how Christianity was mixed in with this Hong Kong riot. The church weren't able to gather because of that, and they moved straight from that into the coronavirus time. So the church in Hong Kong hasn't been able to gather as normal for months, and yet every report is that it's growing, it's flourishing, it's innovating new things. So I'm excited about that. I've heard great stories in Australia of how people have used the pandemic as an opportunity to reach out. Now, Australia went from fires to the pandemic, so it's been a tough 2020 for that space. In Africa, I feel like the stories has got more to do with how the church is not just innovating, but people are individually using this as an opportunity to reach out to their neighbors and love on their neighbors. Somebody said this weekend, which really stuck with me. They said that may we as Christians live lives that cause others to ask questions for which the only reasonable answer is Jesus Christ. And I'm seeing a lot of that happen in Africa and India, and that's really stirring and encouraging.
That's great. Talk about why this is the time for the church.
Well, I think this is the time for the church, because any pandemic, war, crisis causes a polarization. And what happens is it's almost like if you were to imagine two magnets and you can't be in the middle, it goes one way or the other. And I think any crisis like this comes and it tests our resolve, and you've got to decide right or wrong. So if you were an atheist a month ago, to be an atheist was easy to kind of be in the middle. I sort of believe in God. But right now, this pandemic is causing you to ask questions about life after death, the reason for life, what is true goodness. The same is true for every war. The same is true for every challenge. There's this moment that this crisis forces you to make a decision. I believe that now is the time for the church to be the church and to be the hands and feet of Jesus, because people are asking questions like never before, and people are seeking answers like never before. And we have the answer, right? So the old textbook story of Jesus is the answer. We've got it. But how are we going to live it? How are we going to translate it to the current reality with so much of our lives being disrupted from a unity point of view? I don't think the church has been as hungry and as ready for conversations about how can we do this together in the last maybe 100 years. I spoke to a pastor this morning. He leads a church of 120 years old. And I asked him this question, have you ever in 120 years closed 2 services in a row from physically gathering? Answer was no, never before did this happen. This is a great calamity, as some would say, but it's a great opportunity for the church to be the church, because all the fluff, all the add-ons to the church that started out before there were buildings and organizations and boards and microphones and worship teams. The church was the church because of Jesus Christ, the faith in him and the fellowship of the believers. The same is true throughout. Although it got real complicated, I think it's simplified. And I think this is an opportunity for the prayer of Jesus that says, they will know that you're my disciples for the love you have for one another. We can show that love. And I think every Christian leader is more open to a unity discussion now than what they were a month ago.
It's great. Maybe one last question, Jurie, and you kind of alluded to this at the beginning, how you're encouraged. How have you been encouraged, and how do you want to encourage city leaders who are going through the ups and downs of this? There's good days, there's bad days, there's good moments, there's bad moments, but how do you encourage them to continue doing what they're doing, especially those younger leaders you're working with?
Yeah, I think the greatest encouragement that I have for any leader in any space, and I think especially younger leaders, is a friend of mine, Garrett Duffy, always says, your view of God determines how well you live. Well, I want to tell you, in this season, it is as true as ever. And the higher view we have of God, his eternal purpose, his plans, what he's able to do, the importance of him, the more we see God for who he is, the higher our quality of life will be regardless of our circumstances. So I think my advice, my encouragement has been where I've been tethered to God, where I've been found in him, where I found him as my source and my strength. And I believe that is true for every single one of us. Let's stay close to him, because the world has changed. And whether we're just bracing a storm, whether we're getting ready for a new season or trying to survive a season, or whether the world will never be the same again, the fact is God is the same. God is God. God is great. God is good. God is able. And the more we stay tethered and connected to him, the better we will do in this season and every season.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time, Jurie. We'll circle back and do another one of these later on, but really appreciate what you're doing, your ministry, your heart. We'll continue to post updates on the movement.org website, on the COVID banner as well, and on the nextmove.org website. So, Jurie, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Craig.